On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, reasons to be optimistic heading into this NHL season. There's a lot of reasons. Let's talk about them. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in, making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and make sure you subscribe to our subtext as well. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. All right, sir. It's a new week. We're going to be in the third segment talking about, there's a graphic that was going around social media like last week about the four major sports. There's a big pie graph on how they make their revenue. Pretty interesting stuff there. So we'll dive into that a little bit later. But what we're going to do today and tomorrow, this is like kind of like a two-part series. There's optimistic people out there and there's pessimistic people out there. So we will be going over reasons for both and with the Colorado Avalanche. So tomorrow will be the pessimism, reasons to be pessimistic heading into this Avalanche season. But today is good news. Start off the week nice, warm, and sunshiny and all that fun stuff. And we're going to be optimistic heading into the season. Can we do that? Is that possible in this day and age of social media and everybody hating everything to be optimistic? Oh, hang on.
Yeah, it's going to take every fiber of my being, every cell in my body, but I think I could be optimistic.
Oh, man. You know what? It's like as this off season goes on, I just feel like more and more people are just like that Homer Simpson just fading back into the bushes and not really like feeling good about where this Avalanche team is. I'm not there fully, like a lot of people are. But I'm getting the vibes of like it's not aging well for some reason for people.
It's all of life right now. You see what they did to my boy Dr. Doom. I can't be optimistic about a single thing.
Kyle and I talked for a solid half hour before we hit record about that news, but we don't have a Locked On Marvel, so we're not going to get into that right now. But you can tell if you're watching on YouTube by the look on Kyle's face, he's not too happy about that.
Nope.
But we will start here, sir. Let's get into this and reasons to have optimism heading into this Colorado Avalanche season. We just have a list. I'm sure some of ours overlap. Go for it. And I have some people from subtext too. But throw something out there. What makes you feel good heading into this season?
Starting out the bottom of the list, Druin Part 2.
Okay.
What can you do to follow that up? Like you started out with a good baseline, honestly, with nothing that really would indicate you would have the season that you did last year. Just basically the Nathan MacKinnon factor gave you a season last year that nobody really expected. Now with a whole camp and a whole off season and a season behind you with this team, I'm very optimistic on what you will get from Jonathan Drouin. Even if it's the same, it's a win.
Yeah, I like that because, and we've said it before with him, of there's not that period where he needs to figure out what his role is. Maybe he might have to figure that out when and if Vanachuskin returns and when and if Gabe Landeskog returns. But he's going into this season much more prepared for what this team expects from him, what this team wants from him and needs from him, and what he can give this team. So what he did last year, improving on that, you would kind of feel like he's up to the challenge to do that, which just makes this team better.
Yeah,
clearly, if he's producing at or better than what he was doing last year, I mean that's what you want for every one of your players. But you are looking forward to seeing what his second act can be in Colorado. So I'm with you on that. And if we want to go off of players, I think and I didn't rank mine or anything like that, but the first thing that will always come to my mind to be optimistic with this team is your big three. When you have Cale Makar on your team, when you have Nathan McKinnon on your team, when you have Mikko Rantanen on your team, you have a shot every single year. Those guys will carry you, and they will be the reason why you win it all, and they will probably maybe be a reason why you don't. You don't want that, but they can carry the weight, and we've seen them do it. And when those guys are in the mix, you're always in. I want to say you're always in every game. I mean, sometimes once when you get blown out, but 9 times out of 10, you are in a game, and those guys are a huge reason why. So as long as they're there and they're not injured and they're not out for a long period of time, you're in the ball game. So you got these 3 locked up, and that's kind of where I start with this team. And you look at other teams around the league that are kind of like that, like the Sidney Crosbys. Yes, they don't win it every year, but it's so difficult to win it every year. It's impossible. But when you have guys like Sidney Crosby on your team, when you have an Alex Ovechkin on your team, go around the league. Those teams are typically in the mix. Remember when Pittsburgh missed the playoffs? They missed the playoffs this past year, but the year before, and that was the first time Sidney Crosby ever missed the playoffs. I mean, what was that, in year 16 or something when he finally missed it? It's crazy. So you're in the game when you have guys like that.
And see, and that kind of loops into my number 4, because I do have the big 3 kind of in here, 2 of the 3 in my top 5, but I'm optimistic about Cale's year after being human. We talked about like Cale Makar, even in the Norris votes, there wasn't that grand mystique around Cale Makar. It was like, yeah, he had an off year. Cale heard this too, and you could visibly see there were times that you're like, is he really injured? This doesn't look like Cale. There were a lot of mistakes, mishaps. He wasn't happy with that year. No. And you get to see, this is something to be optimistic about. We always talk about Nate having that just weird, hardwired, like, I'm going to be better. Now we get to see Cale Makar do that, because ever since Cale has come into the league, he has been a god amongst men. And now we see a force that has met Cale Makar where he's been human for just a little bit. What does he do to push through that? That's what I'm looking forward to.
I think a lot of people, it's funny, I've seen some like very early projections and guesses for awards and stuff for next year. And Cale Makar is already at the forefront of the Norris. And it's almost always followed up with what you just said. Like, he didn't have his best year. And even not having his best year, he scored a boatload of points and was 3rd in the Norris voting. So an off year for Cale Makar gets you a ton.
Yeah.
But a lot of them said, like in the little blurb following saying he was the favorite for Norris, is like, if that's an off year and he's not happy about it, we should be terrified of what a quote unquote bounce back season will look like for Cale Makar. Because we really haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen him go through a season like he went last year, which some people are just feeling like it was not his best year. I mean, I guess that's debatable. He had a really good season, but is it up to Cale Makar standards? Probably not. So let's see what we talked about, the second act in Colorado for Jonathan Drouin. Let's see what a bounce back act looks like for Cale Makar, and it might be scary. It might be scary because a lot of people are bringing into question like his defense from last year, not the offense. The offense is there. It was there. It probably always will be there. But some people are starting, like, they're planting the seeds of, is he not as good as a defenseman as we thought he was? I thought he was fine last year. Was he otherworldly? No. And when people expect that of you and you're not, then they start to question you. So I think he knows all of that stuff too. And he's taking the mental notes, and I'm looking forward to a big year from Cale Makar this year, as always. So I'll get another one in from me, and then we'll take our first break. But for me, it's the 2C is hopefully, like we think, is short up with Casey Middlestat. We thought this last year too at this time, right? But that is no longer the case. And I think the guy that they got with Middlestat it really fits the bill, fits the mold for this team. So not having that question, at least right off the bat, and feeling like you you have the right guy there, gives me, more optimism, especially at that position. That more optimism, than I've had at that position than since we've had Godry, really.
Yeah, and like you said, he's got about a half a season with the Avs, so it's not like we're like we were last year. What Ryjo could have been or projected to be. Like, you have a little bit of sample size what he looks like in an Avalanche sweater, and now he has an off season to go through, and camp and preseason. So I'm very excited about the 2C position coming up.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be nice to not have to think about 2C when we're dancing around the trade deadline?
Yeah, like it would be nice to, when we get to that point of like what we need to fix are the right, those pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
The depth stuff, and not have to try to go finding that, or a goalie or something, like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. We got more that we want to discuss and some subtext comments as well. So let's get our first break in, and we'll continue this talk right after this. All right, let's hear from FanDuel, because we love sports and we love them so much that we never want them to stop. But there's no longer playoffs in the NBA or the NHL, but we have baseball, and the Olympics are going, which I am an Olympic household, Kyle. I don't know if you guys are or not, but
we're passive.
Passive on the, okay. I absolutely love it. So
if it's on, we'll watch, but it's
yeah, but still, are the sportsing like you want them to right at this state of the year?
It's lukewarm.
It is
sportsing,
right? And the Olympics, I mean, they're here and then they're gone. You blink and then they're gone. So that's the downside of them. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that we are in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com, start making the most out of your summer. And that's FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so continuing our talk on reasons to be optimistic heading into this season for the Colorado Avalanche. Throw another one out for me.
The Roaring 20s line. No, they are the Roaring 20s line. They found that magic last year.
They did.
And that was just kind of one of those things. You threw things together and a beautiful recipe came out. Now they know their identity and they're healthy. And now they could take that identity and be a unit instead of something that just came out of nowhere. So I'm looking forward to an established identity out of the registered trademark Roaring 20s line.
I'm with you, man. Like I know Jared Bednar likes to play with lines and stuff like that. And I know over the course of a season, some lines get stale and you got to make some moves and stuff like that. But you would like to see all of these like just come out and have just, what the top line is, what the second line is. It's going to get thrown into flux a little bit when Nichushkin returns and whenever Gabe returns, if possible. But you would like to see, especially that line. They didn't come up with a nickname for that line because they were doing poorly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you came up with a nickname for them because they were great. They were roaring.
Yeah, they were.
So, if they can do that across the board, just kind of keep things as in the flow as possible. Sure, things are going to get mixed up from time to time. It's the state of a hockey season. But if like, okay, once this guy comes back and he's healthy, he gets plugged back into his other side, we can bring everybody back to where they go, and away we go. And I think that's the Roaring 20s line.
Yep.
To a team. Yep. Get one in here from Katie. She said there's so much new talent on the team. I'm really excited to see what the new guys can do once they get used to the system. C-Mac and Gabe both seem relatively confident that he'll be back at some point in the season. And we still have the best coach in the NHL and three of the best players in the world on our team. Mikko, Nate, and Kale could all have personal best seasons. Lots to look forward to. She brought up the third point that I have in here, and that is coaching. Jared Bednar, to me, is I hate saying like, oh, he's the best coach in the league, bar none. Year in and year out, he is one of the top coaches in the league by far. So he has shown in years past that that I know like some people don't feel like he adapted well enough when it comes to playoff time and stuff like that. I don't know, and we've talked about his coaching style and how he coaches is how he coaches. He makes adjustments, but not these sweeping adjustments that people want to do. Like they're not built that way. But as far as regular season goes, like he can get this team to buy in. And you've had that season where you just dealt with injury after injury after injury. That was another year he should have won it, or at least been nominated for it. And it's just a joke that he never is. I'm never going to get over that. And I'm just kind of trying to get to the point of acceptance when it comes to that, of him not being up for the Jack Adams. But whatever. Even if he's not up for it, we know what he can bring to this team. And yeah, you have your Cale Makars and Mikko Rantanens, but they need to be coached. And Jared Bednar knows how to do it. So again, as optimistic as I am, when you have your superstars, he's maybe like your fourth superstar in my opinion. And I feel like when you have a coach that can get the best out of his players, I always go into a season like I am now thinking like he will do that. He will do that, and you will be in the mix because of him just as much as the big guys.
If he's so good, where's his awards?
It's a joke. They doesn't have it. It's an absolute joke.
No, but this would be a really good coaching year for Bednar because really, honestly, other than the fourth line, what do you have to figure out? Nothing.
Well, no. I mean, you can say that now, but you don't know what a season's going to throw at you.
Well, I'm just saying, like, last year, it was basically a new team other than the top line, and he knows what he has, so he can utilize actual working pieces with experience. I'm excited to see what Bednar will do with so much, like, honestly, the top three lines kind of solidified. Like, once you know that, going out there night after night, I feel like this is Bednar's best coaching tools he can use coming right out of the gate, where you don't have to figure out things in a 10-game stretch in the first 20 games. I like this guy. We're going to move him up. We're going to move him down. You got a pretty good idea what you have. So Bednar really challenging what he has. I think it's going to be a really good year for Bednar where he doesn't have to manage so many moving pieces.
Yeah, I mean, you're right in that it's nice to know that what's at the top of your lines is pretty much set. But where you earn your money is making the right decisions for those depth lines.
Yep.
So, and we talked about it last week. Like, do they go, veteran or is it more rookie that they go? And he's got to hit that and then get the most out of those players that he settles in on to be your fourth line guys. All right, now I know you're only getting 5, 6, 7 minutes, 8 minutes a night, but they got to be the best 8 minutes of your life day in and day out. Does he make the right moves there? So I always, I give him all the credit that he will. So we'll see. All right. What do you got next?
I'll give you 3 words that should make every Avalanche fan extremely excited. Mikko's contract year.
You are not wrong there, sir.
That's what more could you want? It's the perfect firestorm. Yes, it's going to be stressful at times, but you're going to get Mikko Rantanen production out of the ceiling. So sign me up for that. Front row seats, baby.
That is if the extension is not signed. If it's not, I would almost like I'm pretty optimistic that will get signed. If not before the season starts at some point during the season. But I would almost like, if you're Mikko Rantanen, maybe you don't sign that thing right away, because it's just miraculous to me in sports how guys just have these ungodly seasons in contract years. And if Mikko wants to play that game, and if they're on the fence, if they're not signing it, because let's just say the Avs are at 10.5 and he wants 11.5. Okay, I'm not going to sign this right now. Let's go have a season. Let's go play some games. And then I don't know, maybe around the turn of the calendar when he's just going off, he's got more leverage to be like, I think we can get close to that 11.5. Don't you think?
He's held out before. Need I remind you?
He did, but did that got done before the season started though, right?
He missed preseason.
He missed preseason, but the regular, but he didn't. I mean, like you're saying, like he did not go to that preseason because he was holding out for it. I don't think he's going to hold out. I mean, he's under contract right now. He can't hold out for it, but he could hold out of signing it if they're not at the right dollar amount. So, and it would only benefit the Avalanche for him to go out there and maybe not in the Avalanche pocket because it's put up more money, but in terms of what's on the ice,
Yeah,
if that contract isn't signed, put Mikko Rantanen on your fantasy team because he's
McFarland knows that he is going to have to open up a new bank account if Mikko Rantanen starts the season without a new contract because it's going to go up from there.
Yeah. Electrician Ziggy over on Subtext says we have one of the best, if not the best, top lines in the NHL and the unquestioned top pairing in the NHL. We have a fantastic coach. We are starting the season with a solid 2C instead of picking up one at the deadline. So Middlestat will have had more time to absorb the Avalanche system and not be forced to learn everything during crunch time of the season. In that same vein, Ryan Johansson will no longer be in that spot soaking up ice time and producing next to nothing. Lastly, should Landy come back, the surge of energy from the team just might blow the roof off Ball Arena. It wouldn't matter to me if he comes back day one or in January. The first time he comes back in Ball Arena, he's right.
Mm-hmm.
That place is gonna a rock concert will have nothing on what that crowd is gonna do to Ball Arena. That's gonna be a great, great time.
Yep, it's optimistic because you have two more names that are floating out there that could return at any point during past November. So it's optimistic. Like you could be optimistic about how this team is now, but wait, there's more.
Yeah. How many more you got?
One
more. Let's just take a quick little break. We'll get your last one, and then we'll talk about this NHL, how they make their revenue compared to other sports. It's pretty interesting stuff. So stick right there. All right, welcome back. So we're going to get to, you have one more. I have one more as well. Mine is up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. So it's kind of given away. But what do you have? You got one more left and a reason to be optimistic heading into this season for the Colorado Avalanche.
And it's the most craziest thing you can ever hear as a number one. I'm optimistic about our goalies.
Whoa, really? I mean, good, yeah. But that's a little surprising. All right.
I think, honestly, last year, Georgiev learned how not to play, how much his leash is with this team, and how to play for this team, and how much they have his back. Mm-hmm. I feel like he really had his baptism by fire last year. It was almost to the point of him losing his starting job and then coming back and having an incredible series in Winnipeg and holding on for dear life against Dallas. I feel like, and seeing that team really back him up after game one in Winnipeg, I feel like he learned a lot about his place on the team and what's expected of him and how much easier things go when he just does normal goalie position things.
I would say if you're going to say that's one reason you're optimistic for the goalie position, it would be not that Justus Sandinen just becomes this incredible back, but just that he is there for relief throughout the season.
Yep.
And just gives Georgiev just time to get some normal rest, which if he can do that, then that kind of makes me optimistic for Georgiev to just be able to play the position, not run down. So if Annunen can do that, I think you do have a reason to be optimistic about both of these guys giving you kind of good production for the team.
And Justus is basically a Frankie replacement. You have as much tape.
You want him to be, yeah.
And you have the same idea. He hasn't really been tested, but when he's out there, he's okay. It's the same mindset. So, and you felt pretty good in the goalie position when you had Frankie back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. Vargar says the return of the king. Unlike my man Kyle, I have faith in my captain. I think Landy comes back around Thanksgiving, and the team gets its swagger back. I think he's a net front presence on the power play one and the middle six guy, but he is the leader once more. I wish for nothing than that to ring true, and Mr. Von Doom has to admit the captain has returned.
No,
and there is no ill effects whatsoever.
Vargar, you know just as well as me, Landy's going to be asleep during the Lions game on Thanksgiving. What are you talking about?
We're all sleeping during the Lions games. It's a tryptophan. The last one that I have, and it's up on the screen there if you're watching on YouTube, is how much does having a Stanley Cup help? You know, in I'm kind of a big believer in that if you've won it, doesn't guarantee you anything. I'm not saying that, but I am saying like it puts, in perspective how difficult it is to do it. And you know what it entails to do it and now to do it again. Because once you've done it once, teams are gunning after you, even though it's a couple years removed. If you start getting ahead of steam into the playoffs, teams would be like, okay, they've done this before. We need to stop the Colorado Avalanche, just like they would do that for Vegas, just like they'll do that for Florida now. When you have that title and it's still relatively new, you still have the target on your back. Maybe it's not as big, but it's still there. And for teams that win it, they know what entails it comes with that of going through the playoffs and the grind that it is. So and that's another thing I just think of for teams that have won one, they could go do it again. And they've been there before, not all of them obviously, but the big names have been there before. And if you get all that stuff with what Vargar is saying and with the captain coming back, which is just a shot of adrenaline for everybody, depending on when that is, maybe that carries you through the rest of the regular season and going into the playoffs, you've done it. So that thing, just for me, it's a big deal for when you have a title. It's just the chip in your pocket that we know what this is, how difficult this is, and we've done it and we can do it again.
Yeah, and it's optimistic because you're defining your legacy. Like you're not going to be Tampa Bay. You're not stringing them together back to back. You're not Pittsburgh or Chicago or LA, whereas every other year. You're right here where you can define your legacy. Are you St. Louis, Washington, possibly Vegas? Could this be their one and done? Like you have those three floating out there. Is that going to be it? You're 1 in 15, 20 years? Or are you going to go back and win another one and stay in this window? Because you're right in the middle. And the Avalanche know this too. And they're going to go out there and fight for it because they know how to do it. They've done it before. The DNA is still there. Same head coach. So they're going to go back out there and get back to their winning ways because they don't want to fall into that St. Louis, Washington category.
Yeah, because once it starts getting further and further away from the last time you won it, you still remember it, but you get a little bit older, the memory starts to lapse a little bit.
Yep.
And not that you forget, but it's still fresh of what you had to go through. So you're right. Yeah, you want to get another one relatively quickly. So can they do it? Yeah, I think there's enough there that this team is good. Again, we said it last week. They're not like the head and shoulders above everybody, but they're there. I think they're there. And yeah, I think that it's the same. Once you get into the playoffs, anything is possible. And I think we all agree that this Avalanche team is a playoff team. Mm-hmm. So how you're playing heading into the playoffs still will hold a lot of weight. So we shall see. All right, throw comments out in the comment section. Optimism only, because tomorrow will be pessimists, and we'll do that as well. Where we're going to finish up today quickly is this graphic that was floating around on social media. If you are watching over on YouTube, there it is. It's the 4 major sports: NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and NHL, and how they make their revenue broken into a pie graph. NFL, no surprise, that's the king. They do $18.7 billion in just revenue. Next is Major League Baseball at $10.9 billion. NBA is tied with them, actually, with $10.9 billion. And there is the little engine that could in the NHL at $6.8 billion in revenue per year. And 44% of that comes from ticket sales. You always hear that the NHL is a gate-driven league. They make their money at the gate. So if they're not selling out, like well, who was it last year? Winnipeg. Like Winnipeg was struggling to sell tickets. Gary Bettman went up there to be like, guys, what's going on? Why did he do that? Right there. Because almost half of your league's revenue is coming from ticket sales.
That's why
And that is the
Utah
best.
exists.
Right. Yeah. And that is the best out of the 4 major sports. The worst is the NFL for tickets. They don't need their money from ticket sales, although they get 17% of it. But look at that difference.
Yeah.
44% for the NHL to 17 for the NFL. And the other major sports, baseball's at 31%, which is their highest percentage. And basketball is at 26%, which is their second highest percentage. Now, the NFL and the NBA get, especially the NFL, 66% for the NFL, and 41% come from the national TV and media deals, where it's 19% for the NHL. So overall, and there's other stuff in here too, but what are you thinking? Where are you getting out of this graphic?
It's alarming because the NBA gets 42% of national TV and media off the same networks that the NHL now has access to nationally. And they only bring in 19%.
That's a really good point. And it's just, yeah.
It's the exact same networks. If you're going national, it's Turner and ESPN on both NBA and NHL. And the vast difference of the two, it speaks a lot to me.
Yeah. I guess the one thing I give the NHL credit for is the 5 different things here. So the 5 aspects are ticket sales, national TV and media, team sponsors, concessions and parking, and local TV and media. And for the NHL, they split it up relatively easy. Yeah, ticket sales is 44%, but the other ones are all pretty equal. 19, 14, 12, and 11. Where the other sports, it's like a big chunk, maybe not baseball. Baseball is maybe the next one next to NHL where it's a little bit more even. But basketball and the NFL are so a large chunk of it is so much one thing, which is national TV, but that brings in so much revenue.
Yeah.
And the NHL just they don't have that. They don't have it. But it is interesting. That's a very good point that you bring up, that they're on the same exact networks as the NBA.
And to those that are screaming about jersey sponsors, 14% team sponsors. The NHL is very bold and broad with their jersey sponsors, their helmet sponsors. It's a new thing. It's awareness, and it's the third piece of their pie.
And I still say, man, like, I don't like the ads on the helmets. Ads on the jerseys, I can get over. And I know that's sacrilegious to some people, but I just don't like these helmet ads. I can't get used to them.
I'm on the flip because that jersey ad has ruined that new Ducks jersey.
Yeah.
But the helmet ones I can get over. I can't, I don't even think about them. But the jersey ones bother me because guess what? If I go buy it, I now have to wear that on my jersey.
That is the downside. That is absolutely the downside. So I don't know. It's an interesting graphic just to see where everything comes from. And I just feel like is the NHL, is it going to be difficult for them to grow revenue if so much of your revenue is coming from ticket sales? Because ticket sales are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you sell well for the most part. You do sell out most of your games, but ticket prices go up incrementally over the course of years and years and years. Where TV contracts are that can go up billions of dollars. Yep. The next time you make a deal for that. So I just don't feel like the NHL is going to catch any of these other leagues because they're still so dependent on the gate, where the gate really doesn't move all that much year to year.
I say reevaluate this when the contracts come up, because NHL's doing really good numbers in this previous Stanley Cup and playoffs. So when the deal comes up around again, I believe it's going to be a bigger piece of the pie of that national TV and media slice.
Yeah, someone had a comment in this was up all over social media. Someone had a comment in the comment section one of these posts where they said, it was Gary Bettman and who was David Stern, right? Or who was the commissioner of the NBA, and it was like,
oh, it's Adam Silver now in the NBA.
It's Adam Silver now, but this was when David Stern, like when they kind of both took over, they were kind of at equal footing with everything. And look at where the NBA is now in those contracts that guys are signing, like $50 million contracts per year. And how much, and I know they only have 12, 13 guys on a team compared to, 23 that you have to dress for an NHL team. So there's more money going into a roster, but still it's like, but salary cap wise for team salary caps are not even anymore. And it's just the NBA was able to negotiate good deals while the NHL, we know some of the struggles that they had in doing that over the past few decades.
It's NBA is a better marketed league as well.
They do.
And the NHL is still trying to get out of the shadow of, we have rough, tough goons. Watch us fight and kill each other every night. They're still getting out of the shadow of that. Yeah, they're coming out of that.
So interesting. Thought it was an interesting graphic to bring up. So, all right, that is going to wrap it up for today, everyone. And like I said, tomorrow we'll get into the pessimism. So 0 pessimism on the message boards today. It's all optimism, all optimistic, all fun, all dandy. It's all thumbs up. We'll get thumbs down tomorrow. I'm sure the comment section will run wild with that one. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and making your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan, and I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow.